When they had come near Jerusalem and had reached Bethphage, at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village ahead of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, just say this: 'The Lord needs them,' and he will send them immediately." This took place to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet, saying, "Tell the daughter of Zion, look, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey." The disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put their cloaks on them, and he sat on them. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and that followed were shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest heaven!" When he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was in turmoil, asking, "Who is this?" The crowds were saying, "This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth in Galilee." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, good morning, everyone. I think we've finally come to a Sunday for which it is hard for us not to be here together in the building. This whole week is Holy Week, and today is Palm Sunday. And I think that for maybe the first time in a long while, that we're going to be looking at this day with a new set of eyes. Palm Sunday has always been maybe a bit more complicated than the ways that we portray it in the church. Usually on Palm Sunday, it's light. The mood is light. It's joyful. It's full of recognition of that office of the King that Jesus fills. I mean, it's Jesus coming into the city, and ultimately his presence leads to the highest moments of the Christian faith, right? Those are the things that we're going to be thinking about over the next week. We really wrestle to see this moment, this day, Palm Sunday, and not connect it to the next moment. But that was the old world. And now we're entering into maybe a new world for us. And in a way, this new world that we're transitioning into is maybe a bit like the city of Jerusalem on the day that Jesus rode that donkey in. For both us today and for the city of Jerusalem, momentous changes are right around the corner. Now, for us in our position, right, like these kinds of things seem pretty obvious to us, right? The world is just changing around us right now. We were just in a world previously that was like so laser focused on like the accomplishments of the individual, the progress of people, and what sits in front of us. Like it may have some, shadows of that former world, but it's going to be different. What form the world takes, maybe we're not really sure about right now, but our eyes are open and we're watching to see where the Lord calls us next. For Jerusalem, it was another Passover celebration when another potential revolutionary was rising in popularity. That's Jesus in this story. It was the same thing that kind of always seemed to happen in the city of Jerusalem. They would gather, they would dream of freedom. They would try to find that person who might liberate them from the occupation of Rome. In most years, it didn't work and they just went on with their life. In this passage, though, we see Jesus as he becomes the focus of all of Jerusalem because he fits the mold of what they expect. He's wildly popular with the people. He regularly speaks in opposition to, the leaders that are there. He has a following with him everywhere he goes. There's always a crowd. He seems like the perfect person who could be that, kind of like figurehead leader of a movement, of a revolution. But see, Jerusalem's about to change. The people can't really see that. They're going through the motions of what they have always known. And even though part of that moment for them is to find the agent of change for political power, they kind of know that they're not going to find that in any person, right? But they know also that in Jesus, they're probably not going to find that person. It's why at the front end of this story, the part that we talk about today, they're revering and they're honoring Jesus. But at the back end of this story, they're sentencing him to death. There's a change coming in Jerusalem, but Jerusalem doesn't know about the change that is coming around the corner for them. They can't see how life and how their identity is about to shift, and it's going to shift so hard for them. They've got it all figured out in this world, but soon it's going to be a different world. In this moment, as I read through this passage, there are just two groups of people that I can't help but think about in that crowd that day. There are, all of those folks who are in the crowd coming to see the show, coming to pay tribute to the latest contender. They're doing all of the things that we associate with Palm Sunday. They're laying out their cloaks. They're breaking off the branches of the trees and setting them before Jesus and his donkeys. They're the ones that are singing, "Hosanna to the Son of David." They, though, are simply seeing that moment and they're reacting to that moment. The other group that I want us to think about, though, are the disciples, the people who are actually there with Jesus. They're the ones who are walking with Jesus while all the rest of this stuff is going on. But I think more importantly than the fact that they're walking with Jesus is that they are listening to Jesus. They're obeying Jesus. They're walking with Jesus through all of this. See, I want us to see these two groups of people, but I really want you to see that they are doing two very different things, right? They're in the same place. They're focused on the same person, but they are not doing the same thing together. See, the crowds are there to do the thing that crowds do. They are there to gather. They're there to cheer. They're there to make the big noise about what's going on in the moment, right? But they're not there to be followers of Jesus. They are really just kind of like fans of this moment. For them, Jesus is really kind of like a side note to their participation because what's happening around Jesus, right? Like they would have been there doing that for anyone. The disciples, on the other hand, they're there for a very different purpose. I mean, like, they are only there because of Jesus. If it weren't for Jesus, they would still be fishermen, they would be tax collectors, and they would be doing that someplace other than Jerusalem. They are there in this moment because they're listening to Jesus and they're doing the thing that he tells them to do. So tell me this. Of these two groups, who is more ready for the change that is ahead of Jerusalem? Now, I know some of you guys know the answer to that already, but if we take a step back away from celebrating the crowds, the ones who are crying out Hosanna in this moment, and we recognize that soon, in just a few short days, they'll be shouting, "Crucify him," we really begin to see the difference between a disciple and a fan laid bare before us, right? Because fans come and go. Our team is good. Everybody's there to support them. Our team is bad. Maybe not so much. But disciples are there with the one that they follow. And these disciples, they listen to Jesus. They obey Jesus. They follow Jesus. So when it comes to the shift that is ahead of the city of Jerusalem, they struggle for a moment, But when they hear the word of the Lord again, they get right back on it. They get together and they follow well again. And I get that maybe this isn't the message that we want to hear on Palm Sunday, but I'm going to tell you something. We're in the middle of a big shift too. Do we, in recognition of that, do we want to be people who are just reacting to everything that's happening around the world? Do we want to be people who have no anchor? Do we want to just be fans of Jesus, people who show up to the stadium, to the church every Sunday, right? When it's convenient for us to follow, that's when we follow. As the world shifts, though, we need to do more than just enjoy Jesus. We need to become disciples of Jesus. We need to listen to that voice. We need to pay attention to what that voice says. And when we hear that word, oh man, we need to follow. If we want, we can put our heads in the sand, right? We can pretend like nothing is different happening out here right now. But I wouldn't recommend it. Let's navigate this time with our hearts and with our minds and with our spirits anchored to the voice of Jesus, and let's see where the Lord will lead us. This past week I've been trying to give you guys some advice on how we can pay attention to the voice of the Lord better. One of the ways that I do it is by practicing regular reflection, and there's going to be a card that pops up right now. I want you just to go check out that video and see how I practice the act of reflection. So that's it for today. But I got to tell you, I really miss you guys. For me, Palm Sunday is one of those moments where we should be together. And I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in my spirit right now that we aren't together, and it's hard for me. We should be getting together. We should be doing a lot of stuff. We should be getting ready for a music practice so that we're ready on Easter Sunday for our musical program. We should be singing songs like Hosanna, right? We should be doing those things. We should have our stewards getting ready for a big luncheon when all of our friends can come together. It's a hard moment, but as we listen to the voice of the Lord, we're going to find a way through this. And I'll be honest, that next luncheon that we have together, it's going to be amazing. Hey guys, I love you all. I want you to stay safe, stay healthy. And as always, I'll talk to you tomorrow.